morning, and welcome to Tuesday's edition of Everything Yesterday This Morning. I'm your host, literally Heather. Big news from the Supreme Court late last night with regards to Roe v. Wade. A draft opinion was reportedly, this is not fact, but saw it being floated around, reportedly leaked by one of Justice Sotomayor's clerks named Amit Jain. The draft opinion is a pretty blistering repudiation of the 1973 decision, which guaranteed federal constitutional protections of abortion rights, and a subsequent 1992 decision, Planned Parenthood v. Casey, that largely maintained the right. Justice Alito writes, Roe was egregiously wrong from the start. We hold that Roe and Casey must be overruled. It is time to heed the Constitution and return the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives. Essentially, this means that they are going to put abortion back in the hands of states' rights, as everything but national defense should be. Justices can and do sometimes change their votes as draft opinions circulate, and major decisions can be subject to multiple drafts and vote trading, sometimes until just days before a decision is unveiled. The court's holding will not be final until it is published, likely in the next couple of months. Funny that it was leaked to give people just the right amount of time to act a fool and riot and lose their ever-loving minds and threaten the justices to the point where they magically change their minds before the final ruling is released. When it happens, and it will, I hope to never hear January 6th insurrection again. I think that's a fair trade. The immediate impact of the ruling as drafted would be to end a half-century guarantee of federal constitutional protection of abortion rights and allow each state to decide whether to restrict or ban abortion. It's unclear if there have been subsequent changes to the draft. No draft decision in the modern history of the court has ever been disclosed publicly while a case was still pending. The document labeled as a first draft of the majority opinion includes a notation that it was circulated among the justices on February 10th. If the Alito draft is adopted, it would rule in favor of Mississippi in the closely watched case over the state's attempt to ban most abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy. The disclosure of Alito's draft majority opinion, a rare breach of Supreme Court secrecy and tradition around its deliberations, comes as all sides in the abortion debate are girding for the ruling. Speculation about the looming decision has been since the December oral arguments indicated a majority was inclined to support the Mississippi law. Alito argues that the 1973 abortion rights ruling was an ill-conceived and deeply flawed decision that invented a right mentioned nowhere in the Constitution and unwisely sought to wrench the contentious issue away from the political branches of government. Roe's survey of history ranged from the constitutionally irrelevant to the plainly incorrect, and that is the reasoning that was exceptionally weak and that the original decision has had damaging consequences. The overturning of Roe would almost immediately lead to stricter limits on abortion access in large swaths of the South and Midwest, with about half of the states set to immediately impose broad abortion bans. On the flip side of that, any state could still legally allow the procedure, but no one will talk about what their states will be allowed to do. It will only be the prohibition that is the problem. And so at that note, I will offer my opinion on this, strictly opinion. I am morally opposed to abortion. I think that actually, for your all's knowledge, as of 11/16 today, I have been a mother for 10 years. My daughter's birthday is today. And I remember at 4.5, 5 weeks, When I had my first ultrasound with her, I could see her heart beating on the screen. And by allowing her to continue through the life stage processes, she is now the little miniature human that walks around my house every day. So, this idea that you can still abort a child at 17 weeks. Sorry, I've been sick all weekend and it just now really hit me. I think my allergies are acting up. Anyway, to wait 17 weeks to kill a baby, you nearly find out what the gender is at that point. It's 20 weeks when you find out what the gender is. So, or even before, really. Um, so I have a hard time with this notion that 17 weeks is just still too short of a period of time to decide whether or not you want to kill your child. That's my opinion. That's my personal opinion. However, and I will add this caveat, I do not think that it is the state's right to decide. I do not think that the state should be involved in any way, shape, or form with medical decisions for an individual. That should be handled between you and your physician. I stand firm back from when COVID was taking place, whether or not you decide to get vaccinated or not vaccinated, or wear masks on your face, or any of those things. Those are medical decisions that should be made between yourself and your provider. The state has no business getting involved with these types of decisions. So while I morally have issues with it, I do not think that the state should be involved. So that is my position on all of this. We'll watch. Yesterday was apparently the day to piss off feminists, so I did that with flawlessness. But anyway, okay, moving on. NATO has been forced to scramble fighter jets stationed near the Baltic and Black Seas in recent days due to track and intercept. They tracked a number of unidentified aircraft over the seas since Tuesday, and in response, it launched Allied fighter aircraft from NATO's combined air operations centers in Udam, Germany, and Torrejon, Spain. Poland, Denmark, France, Spain, Romania, and the United Kingdom have all launched fighters to investigate unknown aircraft approaching Allied airspace. Russian aircraft never entered Alliance airspace, and the NATO statement said that the interceptions were conducted in a safe and routine manner, though it didn't specify how many of these interceptions have occurred. Okay, obviously we've discussed Elon Musk taking over Twitter. The buyout is still in progress and could technically still be canceled at the cost of $1 billion to both Musk and Twitter. It seems that he is already planning ahead, though, as sources say he's set to charge for 2 major Twitter features, likely gaining millions of extra critics in the process. Musk reportedly told banks that he would rein the money back in from Twitter by making users pay to use both the embed and quote tweet functions when interacting with tweets from verified accounts or organizations. Blocking both of those functions behind a paywall surely won't go down well with users. They're basic features of Twitter. Most game studios are verified. If one of your favorite studios released a new trailer to Twitter, you'd no longer be able to quote tweet telling your followers what you think about it for free, which seems ridiculous. Jack Dorsey spoke out about the buyout in favor of Musk. He said, "Twitter wants to be a public good at a protocol level, not a company," which is exactly the opposite of what Musk is now setting out to do by monetizing basic features. I'm not entirely opposed to this because it's just going to diminish access or engagement to blue checkmark accounts. If I mean, I get it, maybe if I want to tweet out Call of Duty or something, then that's going to be frustrating. But this idea or notion that I need to go quote tweet Jack Posobiec, it's just going to diminish this echo chamber that's been created. So I'm not completely opposed to that, to be honest with you. The Biden administration announced on Monday that it will provide $3.1 billion in funding to support efforts to make electrical vehicle batteries and components in the United States. The funding is not new, thank fucking goodness, but it is part of the bipartisan infrastructure law that was passed previously. It will aid plans by U.S. companies to build new factories and retrofit existing ones to make electric vehicle batteries and related parts. Separately, the Department of Energy said an additional $60 million will be available to support the reuse and recycling of electric vehicle batteries. Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm said that these investments will give our domestic supply chain the jolt, no pun intended, it needs to become more secure and less reliant on other nations. The White House said that it wants fully electric vehicles to make up over half of U.S. new vehicle sales by 2030. I think that this is interesting. I mean, you're bringing production here to the United States instead of us being reliant on countries like China for these components. I'm not opposed to that. This is legislation that has already passed. This isn't new funding. That baby's been wrapped and handed to the parents. So if this is what it's being allocated to, then I guess I can be okay with that. After a series of deaths and suicides among the crew of the USS George Washington, an aircraft carrier that is dry docked in Virginia for maintenance since 2017, the Navy will begin allowing hundreds of sailors to live off ship this week. Within the last year, 7 sailors assigned to the ship have died. 2 health-related deaths, 1 undetermined, 1 confirmed suicide, and 3 apparent suicides that are still under investigation. 4 of those deaths were in 2021, and the last 3 occurred within 1 week this April. Among other changes being made in response to the tragedies and complaints from sailors, the Navy will begin offering temporary housing for those currently living on the ship. The carrier is at the Newport News shipyard undergoing a refueling complex overhaul, which the Navy describes as a multi-year project performed only once during a carrier's 50-year service. That includes refueling the ship's 2 nuclear reactors, as well as significant repairs. I thought this was really interesting because I didn't realize that we have nuclear reactors on ships. I don't know. I guess when I think of nuclear, I just think of the warheads. Or torpedoes or whatever, depending on what vehicle it is. But nuclear reactors, I thought that was, and maybe I'm just like conceptually thinking about it differently, but I thought that was crazy. Okay, today, the Federal Reserve is poised to accelerate its most drastic steps in 3 decades to attack inflation by making it costlier to borrow for a car, a home, a business deal, a credit card purchase, all of which will compound Americans' financial strains and likely further weaken the economy. After its latest rate-setting meeting ends Wednesday, the Fed will almost certainly announce that it's raising its benchmark short-term interest rate by half a percentage point, the sharpest rate hike since 2000. The Fed will likely carry out another half-point rate hike at its next meeting in June, and possibly at the next one after that in July. Economists foresee still further rate hikes in the months to follow. Furthermore, the Fed is also expected to announce Wednesday that it will begin quickly shrinking its vast stockpile of Treasury and mortgage bonds beginning in June, a move that will have the effect of further tightening credit. Jerome Powell and the Fed will take these steps largely in the dark. No one knows just how high the central bank's short-term rate must go to slow the economy and restrain inflation. Nor do the officials know how much they can reduce the Fed's unprecedented $9 trillion balance sheet before they risk destabilizing financial markets. Many economists think the Fed is acting too late. Even as inflation has soared, the Fed's benchmark rate is in a range of just 0.25 to 0.5%, a level low enough to stimulate growth. Adjusted for inflation, the Fed's key rate, which influences many consumer and business loans, is deep in negative territory. Just talking about this is enough to piss you off. The entire world is beholden to these secret backroom meetings conducted with just a few people. And everyone is talking about, oh, it's too late, or they just have to go ahead and increase the rate. But not a single one of them is saying, should they even exist? If they're not beholden to anyone and there is no accountability, is that representative of a constitutional republic? Powell actually said last week that once the Fed reaches its neutral rate, it may then tighten credit even further to a level that would restrain growth if that turns out to be appropriate. Financial markets are pricing in a rate as high as 3.6% by mid-2023, which would be the highest in 15 years. Brett Ryan, who is an economist at Deutsche Bank, said the balance sheet reduction will be roughly the equivalent to 3/4-point increases through the next year. When added to the expected rate hikes, that would translate into about 4 percentage points of tightening through 2023. Such a dramatic step up in borrowing costs would send the economy into a recession by late next year. Powell, ever the optimist though, is counting on the robust job market and solid consumer spending to spare the United States such a fate. Though the economy shrank in January through March quarter by 1.4%, and businesses and consumers increased their spending at a solid pace, we increased our spending because everything costs more. By my personal calculations, roughly 11% more in that same quarter. Oh man, that is your Tuesday edition of Everything Yesterday This Morning. I hope you guys have a great Tuesday. Should be great watching the meltdowns on the internet today. I love you all. Y'all take care. Have a great day.